Go.
In an open memorandum addressed to federal agencies in early 2012, three executive branch technology policy officials assert the executive branch authority over technical standards development accordingly, and I quote, "To realize these objectives, the federal government works with the private sector to address common standards-related needs, taking on a convening and/or active engagement role where necessary to ensure a rapid, coherent response to national challenges. In undertaking such work, the federal government may play various roles in the standardization system user, specifier, participant, facilitator, advocate, technical advisor/leader, convener, or source of funding to assure that key public policy goals are achieved in a timely and effective manner. Successful achievement of these goals also requires an active effort to promote information sharing and coordination across the federal government." Unquote. This memo received mixed response from the American standards community. On the one hand, it seems to suggest that the ultimate authority over the private standards system administered by ANSI would be lost to the federal government. On the other hand, the American people and much of the world had seen enough of the failure of markets when left alone without regulatory oversight to discover the common good. Markets may know everything, but they cannot be depended upon to move in the direction and pace the electorate wants when it chooses new leadership. We must be mindful that the elected government is a legitimate stakeholder in the U.S. standard system. With the announcement by the U.S. Department of Energy, we now have a specific example of a federal agency asserting its convening role in writing the next revision to the International Energy Conservation Code scheduled for release later this year. As many of our colleagues around the country know, the University of Michigan has followed IECC development over the past several cycles and has effectively led the U.S. education facilities industry in development of it from the point of view of the user owner seeking to optimize total cost of ownership. In the 2015 revision, for example, we submitted 10 proposals and arranged to have like-minded colleagues in other institutions speak at the IECC public hearings in Dallas. We even submitted proposals to make the International Energy Conservation Code, well, international, by proposing linkages with the International Standards Organization. For more background on that attempt and a run through the specifics of the DOE proposals for the IECC, I would like to turn the discussion over to Mike. Mike?
Thanks very much, Christine. First of all, let's welcome everyone. We have you, obviously. Dennis, we have Dennis Johnson. I want to say hello, everybody, Dennis. Oh, can't hear me. He's probably on mute. We have Andrew Green, and we have Michael Toner.
Hello, everyone.
Yep, there he is. That's why he's muted. Thanks very much. We have Mike. He's our man in LA, and we like to see what's going on at the University of Southern California. So what do we? Oh, excuse me. Southern California, we decided that your webcam was not cooperating, so we found one at Boston University. So I think this is the Muger Library. This is the old church, and this is Commonwealth Avenue, which happens to be one of my old stomping grounds. So this is what the world looks like from Boston University at this moment. So as I like to remind everybody, our industry is the largest non-residential construction market after home building and road building. And so next week we will actually feature the monthly construction report, I believe from April. March or April, and we'll update ourselves on what's being spent on new construction in our industry. So let's, so with everyone, I think everyone's relatively familiar with everybody else. We don't have any other guests with us today. We will break form a little bit because we have a lot of content to go through. So I thought I'd because of the long weekend last weekend, we we pre-recorded, and we had the privilege of having our colleague Rachel Brooker from NSF present, and you can find her video recording on our Safer, Simpler, Lower Cost, Longer Lasting channel. So since May 18th, we have identified and uploaded onto our blog commenting platform. That's our WordPress blog, which we use most on a near hourly basis. So we have 17 issues that are identified there. We have, accordingly, in that same time period, we've put out 25 comments submitted to ASHRAE, NSF International on biosafety, ASHRAE on building automation systems, and we will be submitting 2 more to the elevator committee by Monday midnight. They're already in process. We actually had a rather lengthy review of our proposals. That's available actually on our website. Unfortunately, it is an hour-long markup session, but as I like to say, these are the unrefined moments. There's a lot of polished stuff out there that don't really get into the specifics that actually add value. So what we do here is a little bit different. And I think if we were to take the number of views as an indicator, we're not being ignored. This is usually a better response attendance than we get at conference presentations at far lower costs. So our hope is that this hastens driving these ideas through. I thought I'd let you also know, since we do like to do something with numbers, we are editing our results. I got some comments the past couple of weeks that people want to see what are the recent results. So here we've taken last year's annual report. We're marking it up. I'm backing up a bit on the Simon Institute custodial standard because that's moving a little slower than we thought. We're going to roll back our expectations about the speed there. Also, these two here, the NEC and the eyewash test, they will be identified as still in process. But in the intervening time, we also have had, and we discussed this earlier, we put we had 2 new standard wins, so to say. We explain why they're important. They tend to get referenced automatically into the ASHRAE 90.1, some of the more marquee codes. So we're always mindful that can, once it's on a consensus document, very often it's one that's rolled right into the mandatory standard. So since it's the Energy Conservation Code, as our topic this week, I wanted to make sure that we are aware that we do have some changes that went in our direction that could be installed into state and local level adaptations of the Energy Conservation Code. So they're non-trivial here. We have a special conference on that coming up. There's actually several rather well attended or rather viewed YouTube videos on that. If you go into our playlist, you'll see that I believe that this one here has almost 150 views. So obviously, you wouldn't think temperature sensors on buildings would have that much interest, but obviously do. Building automation systems in general seem to rank high in the agenda of many conservation work groups, so that I should not be surprised. But we actually were able to roll that back. Of course, we now are working on proposals that are working around the edges there. So stakeholders, legitimate stakeholders, will try to make markets for their products through this process, and that will never end. Regulatory action is a game played on over, as I like to say, and that's just part of why we need to be in this space. Okay, so that's our numbers for this week, and I'm going to ask people to be, you can be unkind about my time here. How am I doing? How are we doing on time, guys? Anyone?
We're 12 minutes in.
Okay, thanks. All right, so let's look at, this is where we're going to hop out of presentation mode into edit mode and rip through the 17 that we've dealt with. So let's go to our WordPress site and see where we've been. We normally do these in reverse order just because that's the way they come to us. So today you'll notice your weekend reading will be, we've identified 3 recycling standards that are in play at the moment. There's a fair amount of competition among the organizations to develop a standard that gets adapted into public law. We we describe some of that here. So we have a group called SERI. You've got a collaboration between NSF, International and Green Electronics Council. NSF has a very good standards development process. Green Electronic Council has a good economic footprint, or at least a political. They're more politically visible than many other recycling groups. So this alliance here is working on their behalf. There's another older organization called the National Waste and Recycling Association. They're also in this space. You actually can see their markup here, and I think it has to do more with the point. I believe this deals more specifically with the equipment, recycling equipment. So that's what you get to read. That's what you get to read over the weekend. Let's see. Let's go back now to yesterday, or was it this morning? Okay. So the ASSE, the American Society of Safety Engineers, are coming up with another standard on confined space entry for construction and demolition operations. So evidently they feel that the OSHA regulations and the NFPA regulations, or the NFPA guide, is insufficient. They want to do more. You use the term confined space. That's a trigger word. It's a good keyword, and from that you can build a suite of safety practices that you can promulgate throughout the safety culture. Let's see, risk assessment of organization. So this is an administrative management, finance administrative. I believe this is it's a new ANSI standard. So typically ANSI standards that are new will be dilutive as they identify who the stakeholders are. So this is likely to be for the safety community and for the insurance industry. So I put this up here, hopefully that somebody in our risk management profession, there actually is a trade association, or any other knowledgeable person who is interested in developing the core ideas. Make no mistake about it, these ANSI standards developer, their documents will become leading practice. So you can be involved early, or you can be involved late. It's your choice, but at least you know about it now. So here we have the American Society of Biological Engineers. They're based in St. Joseph, Michigan. They're kind of a local developer, and they are preparing a standard, again, a new standard for determining landscape water demand. So there's a lot of concern in our industry, especially among campus planners, about green space. So this tends to be this will be a new standard, and you may find some surprising benchmarks and guidelines and ideas that will be conveyed through that. So they actually have a little video here. You can see what they're all about. This one was last weekend's reading, a very large document, has a large effect on our industries, especially the university-affiliated healthcare enterprises in our industry. So we're fairly active in this one. We've identified at least 7 issues where we like to get some ideas on the table. So this is being led principally by the IEEE committee. It's basically me and about maybe 10 or 15 other people around the world dealing with this globalization of medical care and research. So that's why we try to work across several time zones on this one. Let's see. Okay, so there's that. Sustainable Development Communities. Okay, so NFPA is the United States Technical Advisory Group leader for a new ISO standard for sustainable development in communities. Again, these early standards tend to be dilutive, but starting from the 6th year, for example, they start to have real meaning, and usually the risk comes from regulators and other organizations and other governments will be using this as a template for regulations they would propose to legislators. And once you start making a proposal to legislators, we know what happens then. Energy efficiency for telecommunication equipment. We have a few computers in our industry, you might have heard. So these are all the servers and all that equipment farther upstream in the data centers, etc. So we're following that one also. We were last week at the State of Michigan Electrical Advisory Meeting. We did prepare some proposals. Again, I can't go into much detail, but this is likely to be rather significant on many fronts. So I can only say, please, if you're in the state of Michigan, have a look at this, and you're welcome to call me or a few other people. we can let you know what we're doing. We are trying to be reasonable. We're not throwing thunderbolts. We've been working on this for well over a year now, but we like to see this succeed. So there's just too many details to go into. So it's a long story short, though, as you can see, what we try to say here is that transformers, and this is a state of Nevada study. If you look at the number here, this number here is well below 25%. So transformers are being specified for fire safety reasons well below their rated capacity, and we think that that needs to change. And almost everybody else does, too. It's just that the technical committee in the NEC needs the data. So structural engineering and abiding concern, this is a longer-term project. We're trying to get the structural engineers to be more granular in the way they do a laboratory design. We have to correlate with the IBC. So this one's moving slowly, but since you're moving money in billions, you shouldn't be surprised. We are starting to watch. Dennis is kind of interested in our athletic enterprises and how much money they're spending there, and what kind of safety they get with the money they're spending. So, and also lighting practices obviously have a lot to do with the quality of the television. I've been personally involved in those for a number of years. So I know all of them. Not an ANSI standard, but lighting ends up being an issue on television, as you can imagine. Again, our industry has lots of kitchens and dorms and hospitals and elsewhere, so we want to be following this because this is a fire hazard as well as a material hazard. So we want to be following leading practice discovery there. Somewhat similar, on a similar line, thinking the refrigeration systems. We have a lot of food enterprises, and we want to make sure that the food is safe and refrigerated appropriately. And I think that pretty much, no, I guess we're dealing with, so the safety elevators, we've been working on this one. We've been bearing down on this one this week. Again, you can go on our site and see where we are with it. There's about an hour and a half of markups on that one, if you can sit through technical specifics. And that's what we try to do here. We don't do as much high-level stuff except once a week now, but we want to let you see what down in the weeds looks like, where real value is created rather than just going to a conference and watching other people talk about it. So, and then finally, what do we have here? There's healthcare, telecommunication systems, security, information security in the healthcare system is a core issue. Here's a standard that exists. We want to mark it up a bit. It hasn't been reviewed in 5 years. It's time to mark it up for healthcare information security. And let's see, finally, I think this is where we left it. We started out dealing with pools. Again, lots of pools in the athletic and in the hospital areas of our industry. So I have a feeling that Christine's going to tell me that we're running short of time. How am I doing, Christine?
We have 9 minutes left.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So this is our cinematic moment. We like to have, if there's one reason for being here today, it's that we want to get through this document here. And this document, let me give you some, in the interest of time here, I'd like you to understand that this is the website that the DOE has prepared for the rest of the world. Remember, I'll restate what Christine had said in the earlier part of this teleconference, is that markets, sometimes they need to be moved along. We have a lot of examples where if markets left by themselves will not do things, and so the government has to be a fallback. So I think the DOE is providing that service to the American people, and they've identified some issues. And I can't say you can blame. They've really tried to be inclusive. Part of what we're doing today is what's inclusive. And you can see they're being very transparent about what they're doing. Yesterday, they did have a teleconference. I announced this, by the way. This is in one of our I believe I put this on our Twitter site. If I didn't put it, I put it a couple weeks ago. This was actually identified a couple weeks ago, not last week or the week before. Others are able to listen to the DOE and what they're trying to do here. In the interest of time, I've just said that we will probably not be able to deal with residential. There's a lot of residential square footage in our department, in our industry, because of houses that are often bequeathed to universities. And but we have to focus and ration our advocacy resources. So we're largely going to be focusing on the commercial on the commercial side, the commercial proposals, and that's what this document is. They have, and I'll cut over to, so this is the detailed version of the next slide, of the next panel I'm going to show you. They've gone to explain why they're doing certain things, and it looks like it's fairly rigorously studied. As always, we have to be mindful that there's going to be a bit of market making here, but it's in service of what's thought to be a common goal, and we have to respect it as such. So I don't know these personally. I know Jeremiah, and they're all good people down there. So this is their statement to our industry and others. And at this moment, it appears as though our work groups here at the University of Michigan are leading the industry in this. So where did I want to take you? I wanted to take you, here's the overview of just the, so I said we're going to bypass the residential. We're going to be doing only commercials, and these are some of the concepts that they're advancing. So you're welcome. This is linked on the website for today's teleconference, and you can see that they're going to deal with building envelope air leakage testing. They'll be dealing with solar heat gain coefficients, occupant standby control for HVAC, limit ventilation, reduce VSD threshold for pump and fan motors. Some of these, I know mechanical engineers are going to get a little bit annoyed with some of this. We believe that the driven equipment and the design of getting the fluid to the point, to the work point, so to say, there's far more waste there than trying to deal with the product. But that's a larger discussion. The example I like to use is we can do everything we can to reduce heaters and coolers, water heaters, for example. But if we're spending half of our energy moving the hot water to where the hot water is being used because the pipes are so large, you've wasted that amount of energy. There's far more energy waste in the distribution system within the building than there is at the point where the product is. But unfortunately, the product manufacturers have greater control over that than the installation. We are working on that. Some of our proposals to the International Plumbing Code are trying to address the internal building problems where there's at least as much energy waste. This one here always looks interesting to me. It just looks like we just have to let this is expanding occupancy sensors everywhere. It's a very old battleground, so to say. So that's, I'll just leave it at that. We're likely to see quite a bit of debate on this one. Interior lighting allowances. Again, we think that there's more to be gained by getting our transformers down to size than all this other proposals. But I'm sure that if I'm a believer in small changes, incremental small changes at a very high rate, then certainly these all qualify. So this is the core document for them all. These are just the concepts in general, and they decided to summarize them here. So this is the roadmap, includes a sample of prescriptive packages. So they seem to be moving away from performance and into prescriptives as best I can tell. I'm not going to go over what we did the last revision. You heard that when Christine said that we were trying to make the International Energy Conservation Code more international, and it was not received well because they wanted prescriptive benchmarks, or the people who wanted prescriptive benchmarks outvoted the people who would permit performance-based approaches. So that's our cinematic moment, and I guess I could summarize here. How am I doing on time? I bet you I'm out of time. Christine's muted.
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay.
3 minutes.
Excellent, I think we can do this. So here's our schedule, folks. Those of us in the industry, elsewhere in the industry, we have until January 11th, 2016, a little bit over 6 months to get some ideas out there. I hope that this IECC, the DOE document, triggers some response. And best of all, we like data. If organizations out there have data they can share to inform some new concepts or to to present against what DOE has presented, that would be terrific. So we can help DOE help us. And I think, any closing reflections? Have I totally dominated today's teleconference? Have I not made questions? I've asked people to remute themselves a bit, but any thoughts from anybody?
Nope.
Nope. Pretty dry stuff, huh? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going through here. So one thing I will say, and I won't write it right now, is that it looks as though we will have ANSI here as our guest again at the University of Michigan in September. And more recently, we will be having, we've learned that the company member forum that NC has every year will be held here at the University of Michigan mid-May in 2016. So we're working through the specifics on that, and you'll probably see some announcement. That's something for ANSI to announce. They've already done it internally. I'm effectively doing it internally, but we'd be happy to have ANSI here to help us explain our business case for continued and expanded engagement. So with that, everyone, I think we did fairly well on time, Christine.
Yes, 2:29.
Excellent. Great. Everybody appreciates the 29-minute. Everybody appreciates the slightly shorter teleconference. So what we'll do is Dennis will be putting a nicer front end on this, and we will get this up there by Monday or so. So with that, I guess I hope everyone has a great weekend, and thanks for visiting us. Bye.